Episode 2 Trial. Hot-faced interruptions and objections erupted from inside the courthouse. They pounded through the windows and bled through the walls, invading the peace of Suthrei, the northernmost city of the Unu Empire, capital of the volcanic Gwali Islands. A tall, solemn young man with two long, thick, black braids knelt at the head of the courtroom, his head locked in a kang, flanked by an audience of state administrators, island governors, powerful merchants and the common riffraff wanting to feel involved. It was a very long way for the rightful king to fall. Flanking Soin's face, plastered on his kang, were the crimes he was accused of: financial fraud, unauthorized colonization, unauthorized warfare, irresponsible use of soldiers, and enticing massacre, all tidily stamped. Soin had beached his little escape vessel on the shores of Suthrei 80 days past and began touting about the promise of Arcadia without cease. By night, he looked for investors in Arcadia's renewed colonization among high society at first-rate banquets and brothels. By day, he sold shares in Arcadia's future to investors on the street. The brothers, nephews, fathers and daughters that went with Soin north were asked about, but the prince reassured them all that they were alive and well, busy holding down a meagre colony but desperate for funding. This lie saved him from being branded as a bad investment. Soin's mended story of the turned-back savages and the colony underway buzzed around the Gwali Islands. He planned to claim, with shock, that the colony had perished when the time came to return to Arcadia with fresh colonists aboard new ships. Soin created an air of excitement around his endeavour, promising to return investor money threefold, sixfold, tenfold more as Arcadia's development grew. Before long, Soin became known as the King of Arcadia by his investors, and he might well have been. Just before Soin amassed a fortune large enough to fund another expedition, however, his shareholders, nervous at the uninterrupted months he spent away from his so-called colony, staged a protest in the square of Suthrei, demanding proof of Arcadia's wealth and the colony's well-being. Soin was to be banned from selling stocks in Suthrei and barred from withdrawing his money from its bank until he came back with some colonists to testify to his word. Soin, feigning offence, agreed amicably and promptly sailed south that very night to look for more charitable clients outside of the tropics. He lasted no more than 12 days before his investors got wind and sent agents to drag him back to Suthrei. He was arrested and presented to testify in court only after languishing in an understreet prison for 2 weeks, awaiting the arrival of the judge and king of the islands. So, there Soin knelt in court, wearing a criminal's rags, bound in chains, supposed to be humbled. Directly behind Soin, on a raised platform at the head of the court, sat the new self-declared king of these islands, Karth Zidane. This gruff military man, scarred and grizzled, had commanded the conquest of the Gwali tropics 20 years ago, and thereafter commanded its peacekeeping force. A native to the islands, Karth was captured as a slave during their early conquest. He bought his freedom by serving as a soldier and winning wide admiration. He rose through the ranks until he completed the conquest of his own homeland as the Unu Empire's foremost commander. Now he sat, allowing himself to feel some pride at his situation. He was king of his own united islands, while the south remained war-torn between claimants. No more did a foreign emperor rule his native lands. He sat with his foot on the back of the rightful heir to the Unu throne by birth, Soin. Few supported Soin in the 2 years since he had inherited the throne, and none supported him now. Soin's father, the last emperor, was killed quelling a revolt without naming an heir. Soin's mother was discovered through love letters found in the emperor's valuables. Only the emperor's direct court friends, pompous snobs who owed their elevation to him, cared to seek her out in a tiny village on the mainland a long way north of the empire's borders. Her son Soin was ignorantly proud, a quick-tempered young man of meagre upbringing, a foreigner from the north, like his conquering father. Soin was brought up with a strange guttural accent and carried a sense of entitlement to lord over the Unu people. Knowing little and caring less about the art of ruling, Soin threw his father's money at collecting women and at trivial projects to secure his throne, and when he'd had enough of that, he threw the last of it at this latest project of colonization. What supporters and money he had left perished on the plains of Arcadia, or so he was accused. With a kick of his foot, Karth could send Soin toppling down his platform stairs, a sign that the king had heard enough and declared the defendant guilty. Kneeling before the court, under the foot of the new king, exposed as a fraud and stripped of any semblance of dignity and reputation, Soin grew more stubborn and more red-faced than ever. Prison and disgrace only hardened him. Like a mounted bull, he would not relent. He had run with his dream for too long. He had nothing to lose but his pitiful life. Soin shouted objections until his voice broke in defense of his crimes, pleading innocent. He insisted that an empire at war with itself, an empire with no true king, couldn't impose any decrees. It could not forbid him from colonization or declaring war. Soin insisted he left his colony alive and well, maintaining that he went south to sell more stocks because his colony was in urgent need of funding. The majority of the court branded him a liar and argued for his condemnation. His fleeing south instead of heading north made court witnesses see a criminal before them. When a sudden idea manifested inside of Soin, he felt as he felt when he was offered the throne, secure and confident, with a solid future ahead of him. No more did his face redden or his voice waver. He spoke straight and true. He had one more thing to try. Our adventure in the north was not without struggle. That much is true, Soin boasted. But I have defended the sweet and innocent folk in Arcadia from their bullies in the north, earning my fame among them fairly. 'Twould be wise to remind you all that they all consider me their fair protector, their favoured over-king, their blessed saviour. But I am willing to sell my claim over these tribes and lands to the highest bidders, to anyone who wants to make a new start in paradise. If you'll forgive the unrest I've provoked and let me go. I'll pay my proceeds to your king for my freedom. I'll part with my overlordship if you'll let me continue my dangerous and unrewarding project of securing the north so that your peninsula will be safe from savages. I'll do this all for you, my king, because you'll have the rest of Arcadia to tax at your need. Dispose of me, and you lose easy taxes to help win your war for primacy. A costly endeavour and a waste of time it would be to win the fealty of Arcadia all over again. Dispose of me, and any capricious man may rule the north. Keep me, and I will open my gates and let the mounted savages from the north fall on any governor who refuses you taxes, as I owe you my position and my life. The courtroom drained of rage and heat at Soin's speech. Red-faced shouts no longer threatened to burst the windows. The air stood still and cold, listening for a noise. And then it came. Whispers and quiet conversation among the audience. Many harsh, some excited. Karth took his foot off of Soin and played with his sleeves, thinking. If Soin's colony indeed still stood at the top of the world playing overkings to Arcadia, Soin's offer was too good to pass up. He strongly believed, though, that Soin was fibbing and only corpses lay there. But as scenarios flashed through Karth's mind, he realized what Soin might be subtly suggesting to him. If bidders paid top price for their slice of Arcadia and set out to colonize only to discover an Arcadia that bent the knee to no one, most would still desire to stake their claim, especially trading companies with exotic goods to cash in. An auctioned colonization wouldn't cost Karth a coin, but it would earn him many. Soin was a smart man, but Karth was smarter. This criminal who thought he had weaseled his way out of his condemnation should, in a short time, be dragged through the streets for making his bidders buy land owned by no one. In the meantime, though, Soin must be kept alive in order to inspire this money-making colonization project. Killing him would ruin the illusion that he lorded over Arcadia, and bidders would not bid. As long as Karth endorsed Soin, the grandees of Gwali would compete at lining his pockets for permission to colonize, only to line his pockets even more with future taxes. Karth stood, ordered Soin unbound, and hushed the audience. He had made up his mind. The founder of Arcadia's first colony would be heard and, what's more, believed. Servants were sent to retrieve Soin's rough map of Arcadia. The rest of the day would be spent naming Arcadia's rivers and bidding for their possession, while Soin recited what he recalled about each one. Colonies were to be established on the coasts at each river mouth, and land was to be put to the plough alongside those rivers, with tribal enclosures and adequate foraging space respected. The tribes were to owe tribute in live cattle to the colonies at the start of every waning season, sent down the rivers in barges to the mouths. Colony governors were expected to act as subjects to Karth, taxing their Arcadians and colonists in kind. 3/4 of it went to Karth, 1/4 was to keep. Soin was entrusted with the Hunu, the river where his first colony had been established, allowing him to farm it and tax the tribes living within its watershed. This territory, along with the Wall, would be known as Hunu Shed, and it would be owned by Soin. The rest of the north was divided up among 3 bidders. The largest territory in the north was bought by the Ochre Order, a wealthy religious order of Cenobites that branched off from the sanctioned faith of the Unu Empire. Karth sponsored them, and the Isles bristled with their temples. They bought the 2 rivers just south of the Hunu on the eastern coast and named them after their 2 founders, Caddo and Udio. They named their land Ochreland and had grand plans to spread their religion among the Arcadians. The next river south of those was bought by none other than Kai Zidane, Karth's younger brother and the last defeated contender for the Gwali throne. He still had a lot of support, friends and money, and desired nothing more than to make a fresh start in Arcadia. He named his river, quite fittingly, after himself. He named his land New Suthreai, after the capital of the Isles. The meager river in the north, emptying into the western sea, was bought by a Gwali plantation owner, Kad Shudan, who privately owned the most land in the Gwali tropics. He considered it nothing more than an extension of his holdings. He named his river after himself as well, and called his land Cadland. Soin described it as a land of seasonal streams, perfect for growing regal, a chewed drug that had quickly become the cash crop of the Isles. The 2 largest territories dominating the West Midlands were bought out river by river by the 2 wealthiest companies in the empire, the Gwali Shipping Company and the Entripian Shipping Company. Both started as small, private trading companies, formed as their respective provinces were newly conquered, but grew to amass fortunes and serve as the natural shipping and mailing companies for the empire. The GSC served the north, the ESC served the south. With high hopes and competitive spirits, they split the fairest lowland in Arcadia between them and rebranded to the Gwali and Entripian Trading Companies once again, hoping to extract and sell exotic exports from this new land. Gwali's rivers in New Gwali were named after the GTC's top executives. The ETC preferred to call New Entripia's rivers what they were called in the indigenous tongue. A cousin of Soin's and a contender for the divided throne in the south was being harboured and sponsored by Karth for a future campaign. He happened to be present at Soin's court session and the following auction. He made a spontaneous bid for the Cape of Arcadia at the last minute, after it was certain it would go to another man. He had had enough fighting for a throne in the south and was willing to buy his dream kingdom in Arcadia. His name was Radigan, and he too preferred to learn his river's indigenous names. He called his province New Anglor, after the lands his and Soin's people hailed from. The lands east of Arcadia's central peaks were on the starker side of the mountains. They remained practically desert, even during the waxing season, according to Soin. After Soin's comment about this region, much to Karth's displeasure, it had no buyers, so it was dedicated as the preserve of any uncooperative tribes. The last region of any value was a seasonal river just above New Anglor. A guild of fur trappers, the only bidders, bought it for seasonal hunting on the premise that Soin thought he had seen some interesting beasts while sailing past. All the rivers that were named by the bidders were suffixed by the article ni, meaning river in the Empire's official language, New Bainorian. Soin sat late at night on a straw mat across from the High Mother of the Oker Temple in Suthrei. Under its gabled roof and simple walls, he felt a sense of closure to his chaotic adventure. No longer having friends nor self-worth, he told the High Mother everything, how he had made the decision to loot the Hukal camp, killing his father's oldest friends and his come-to-be family. He told of his flight, down the wall and through the colony, after he'd seen the grass quiver with activity on the northern steppe. He expressed to her just how unwilling and terrified he was with regard to death. He told her how he heard confused screams and the thunder of war as he rigged the sails of his escape vessel. He told her how he had gone back, up the Huno again, to retrieve the forgotten map of Arcadia's coastline from his flagship, and of the draining feeling that overtook him as he looked upon his empty colony. He told her of the journey back south, too empty to cry, full of self-denial and guilt. Finally, he told her of his arrival in Suthrei, feeling he could do nothing but try again, lest he was forced to answer the painful and embarrassing questions about what had happened to his followers. Lie followed lie, until reality caught up with him in the present moment. With no one safe to confide in, he chose this most dangerous woman, as if in self-punishment. This was the very woman who bought Okerland for her order. The High Mother was not surprised that Soin had told lies. What surprised her was that Soin was deeply sympathetic to his own evils. The last rain of the season was supposed to pour that night. Soin was instructed to sit under the open sky in the temple courtyard and contemplate his sword. He was not to move until dawn, when the High Mother returned to raise him. There was a chance he would learn a lesson or see his fate. Soin sat, legs crossed, hunched over in the rain, shivering until dawn. His sword stood straight all night, fixed in the dirt before him, braided by rivers, pierced by his stare. He had learned nothing.